Hi, this is Kemp, three-time world champion. I want to talk today about the nutritional component. I believe nutrition played a vitally important role in my winning my first state title back in 1973. And I know for sure it has played a key role in winning my national titles in college and then my world titles internationally. Nutrition is something that plays a very important role in my life today at 60 years old. The focus I've had on nutrition my entire life, I believe, has enabled me to maintain fit and healthy. Let's start with the whole idea of nutrition. And I think a lot of athletes just don't think about it that much, or they just don't want to focus on it because it seems too cumbersome. Not that it's complex, but when people are eating and they are trying to figure out what to eat, sometimes counting calories and all that kind of stuff just gets kind of in the way, and it muddles the whole thing up. But as a wrestler especially, they need to understand and focus on it a little bit more than probably other athletes, because wrestlers are in an environment where they are reducing their food intake because they're trying to get down to a weight class. And when you reduce your food intake, you're also reducing your nutrient intake. And also wrestlers are dehydrating a bit to get down to their weight. So they're reducing their water, which is vitally important, and they're reducing their food. So they're not getting water, they're not getting nutrients. So the little bit of water and nutrients that they are getting, it has to be really focused. Let's start with water though. Again, a wrestler should never restrict their water to the point where they're not able to consume water every day. I'll just start there. We should consume approximately one half of our body weight in ounces in water a day. I weigh 175 pounds. That's about 87. Half of that's 87, so 87 ounces of water I should have a day. That's about five 16-ounce bottles of water, which doesn't really, when you think about it, that's not that much. I start every morning by downing at least one. That's just how I start my day. I start with one 16-ounce bottle of water just to start. And then I drink a lot of tea throughout the day. I like green tea, but I make sure I get my 5 bottles of water in. If you're working out, it's going to be even more, because most wrestlers, they'll lose 2 to 3, and then if you're bigger, you might lose 4 or 5 pounds of sweat in a practice. So you've got to replace that plus your daily intake of water. So let's just start there. That's very important. When you look at food, to make it simple, food can be broken down into basically 5 macronutrient parts: protein, carbs, fats, and water. Okay, we just talked about water. You do get a little bit of water in certain foods, especially fruits. But let's just, since we've talked about water, let's just talk about protein, carbs, and fats. The traditional, general guide is somewhere around 40% of your daily intake of food should be carbohydrates, and then 30% protein and 30% fats. If you are trying to reduce weight, as most wrestlers are, they're trying to get down to a weight class, then you should reduce your carb intake and increase your protein intake. So it should flip. Protein should be probably 40% of your daily food intake, and then carbs 30, and then fat 30. So, and you can vary it a little bit more. You can maybe increase your protein intake even a little bit more. And maybe in the early stages of trying to get the weight down and lose some of that body fat, you might have 60% protein intake, and then the other percentages that they fall in for fat and carbs. Food, as you eat food, you need to have a knowledge of good carbs and bad carbs. Let's just start with carbs, because that is our principal fuel source. Fat is a fuel source, but it's a much more difficult one for your body to break down, and protein is probably the most difficult, and you don't want to be using protein as a fuel source, because then your body will start to catabolize. That term means the body starts utilizing its own protein stores as fuel, so we don't want to do that. But starting with carbs. Good carbs. What are the good carbs? Well, the good carbs are the ones that are complex carbohydrates, like vegetables, like whole grains. I eat a lot of whole grains. Rice is a big part of my diet every day. I eat rice almost every single day, whole grain rice. The simple carbs are the ones that have sugar as a primary base. You don't really want simple sugars in your diet, but it's almost impossible not to get them. So my recommendation would be to try to eliminate them, try not to eat them, and then when you get them accidentally, that'll just be the small amount that you do get. But the simple sugars are things with sugar in them. Soda, for one. Anything that has sugar as an ingredient you want to try to avoid. So you want to steer and stay in the complex carbohydrates, which is mainly your vegetables, and then your whole grains, and your fruits too. Next, protein. Protein's talked about a lot. A lot of athletes feel they need a lot of protein. I have studied it, and back in 1979 I had a chance to meet Ellington Darden. He was one of the original nutritionists that worked with the founder of Nautilus way back in the 70s. Arthur Jones was the founder of Nautilus, and he had Ellington Darden was his PhD nutritionist there, and I had a chance to go there and visit the whole Nautilus headquarters, meet Ellington Darden, read his books. He believed that the recommended daily allowance of 0.36 grams of protein for every pound of body weight is about adequate for the average person. If you are, if you're an athlete, like we're directing this video at wrestlers working really hard, yeah, you'll need more than that. Again, protein, 0.36 grams, and if you just times that by your weight, you'll get kind of what you need as an average. But then as an athlete, obviously you're going to need a lot more than that. You might be approaching 0.8%, as high as 0.8%. If you're a high-level athlete like wrestlers are, if you're trying to gain muscle mass, if you're trying to get bigger. Looking at fats, there's good fats and bad fats, just like good carbs and bad carbs. The good fats are your unsaturated fats, and but you need them. The concept is all fat is bad. No, all fat is not bad. You actually need fats. The good fats comprise your omega-3 fatty acids, which is the principal one that your body needs, and the principal one that you get out of the unsaturated fats. Fish is a good one. I like salmon. You can get the good fats from nuts, and you can get it from avocados. There's lots of different good fat sources, but your fat sources typically the good fat sources typically come from vegetable sources, like your olive oil and all the avocados and all those vegetable sources of fats. The bad fats, the saturated fats, typically come from animal sources. And it doesn't mean that they're all bad, it just means you need to limit your intake of saturated fats. Again, saturated fats typically come from your animal sources, your meats. You can get leaner cuts of meats to reduce your saturated fats. And another real good source of saturated fats comes from coconut oil. I consume a little bit of coconut oil every day, and that's one of your good fats. I cook in it with it sometimes too. But remember, nutrition is very important. You cannot neglect your nutrition if you want to get to the top of the podium, and I know it helped me get to the top of the podium.